What if all it took for weight loss, feeling better, even curing cancer was just reducing acidity in your blood?
It's not that.
Never that.
This is all a scam. Eat more vegetables, sure, but do not get a baking soda IV.
Or maybe sometimes do, but under the direction of an actual doctor. We're doing a full recap of Dr. Miracle on this episode of So Much Crime.
So little time.
Because apparently baking soda IVs are a thing.
I did not know that.
But they said it in the podcast.
Well, I just presume that was a bullshit thing in the podcast.
No. They said that sometimes they do it for like certain
Oh,
situations.
for a certain like medical condition. Yeah. But like not a anyway.
If you want to hear more of this type of ridiculous conversation and all the outtakes from our shows, don't forget to join us on patreon.com/so much crime. So little time. There's a link in our podcast directly to this. You'll get early release episodes, bonus content, fantastic, hilarious outtakes, and also you get to support the show. What more could we ask for, Jeff? What could we ask for?
Well, I know what we could ask for. We could ask people, if you haven't yet, to go on Spotify, go on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, and leave us a rating. You're already subscribed. You're already listening to these episodes. So why not give us those 5 stars? We really appreciate it.
And now you can tell us to shut up and we'll get on with the show. Thanks so much. Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff. And before we start, just going to give you a little warning. If you're new here, this episode is our full recap, which has spoilers for all of Dr. Miracle. We're going to discuss the whole series in this one.
If you haven't listened yet, check out our preview episode on this show. It's the one before this one in your feed.
You can also get a link to Dr. Miracle in our show notes. All right, now, before we get into our discussion, we just want to remind you of what this show is we're talking about. So Dr. Miracle came out in the summer of 2024. The host is Larison Campbell. There are 6 episodes, and they are about 30 to 40 minutes each.
And in our preview episode, we discussed episode 1, which spoke about the alkaline diet from the early 2000s, which I know this is an audio medium, so that weirdness in my voice is explaining to you that he was not a real doctor. Robert Young was trying to push on people, saying, you want to cure anything? You want to put hair on your head? You want to cure your cancer? You want to lose weight? I have it. It's this alkaline diet. And what did he say? Take charge. Heal yourself.
Yeah.
Heal yourself.
He said a lot of things.
He said so many things. We meet both Don Callie and Kim Tinkham, both of whom are victims of Robert Young's. We hear their backstory and how it was that they came to meet Robert Young and put all of their trust and all of their medical care in his hands.
All right, Dee. So that was episode 1. We listened to, 5 more episodes of this story. Where shall we begin?
With a big sigh. No? We just breathe out?
I was definitely mad throughout all of this as I was listening to it.
I feel like I went from mad to sad to mad to sad to raging.
Sure.
To sad to mad.
Oh, I felt some rage for sure.
So much rage. Tell me about your rage, Jeff.
Well, okay. This guy, Robert Young. One of the things we talked about in the preview was I think you were worried, concerned, skeptical. You had feelings that this guy was going to get away with it. Yeah.
Feelings?
You definitely had feelings that this guy was going to get away with it. And he didn't exactly get away with it, but he kind of did. I really wanted this guy to get some type of comeuppance, and I don't feel like he did.
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions I had for you, if you thought his punishment was enough.
He got 5 months in jail.
Sorry, he got 3 years and 8 months, but he had already served a lot at home arrest.
Whatever.
What is home arrest?
It's nothing. It doesn't count.
Yeah, no, I mean, he got feck all punishment. He's still, have you Googled him recently?
No, what's he up to lately?
I was surprised how little it is. He's bad. Like, there isn't enough out there to be like, stay away from this guy. He's still pushing it.
I mean, he's out there doing this he was doing this anti-vax thing when they talked to him here. Yeah, I think that's, and I know maybe it's weird to start at the end, but in the last episode, we're hearing about what happened to Dawn Cowles. I feel like Dawn, like this podcast ultimately is as much Dawn's story as it is his story. And I did go try to look up her Etsy shop, before I got to the end of the episode and learned that she actually passed away in May of 2024. And the Etsy shop isn't there anymore. It's gone, which I was like, oh, I'm going to go support her shop. The fact that she was only getting money from his book sales, right? So she got this $105 million verdict that then got reduced.
It got reduced to like 28 or something. But she was like, or they were saying like it's still a lot of money. And then like, but he only paid like a tiny bit of it.
Yeah, she didn't end up getting hardly any money from him. And she was obviously very sick and not getting better. And it's, yeah, the fact that he's still out there making money off of people selling sham products and selling his sham diet and all of that nonsense.
But you see, I think this is what really pissed me off, because he could have made enough money to be comfortable without taking it to the level that he did. Like without harming people physically and when they're at their most vulnerable. I just don't understand his motivation. I have never experienced hair loss, as an example, but if someone's going to try this alkaline diet and he's saying if you do this, like your hair is going to grow back, or you're going to lose weight, which I understand is a touchy subject for a lot of people. I 100% get that. That's bad to make money off people being like, I'm going to sell this miracle thing for weight loss, but like selling it for cancer, selling it for diseases that are invisible, you can't see it attacking on the inside. You can see if your hair's not growing back, this thing isn't working, but selling it to there, like, I feel like he could have made enough. There is enough people out there wanting a quick fix for their weight or their hair or their wrinkles or anti-aging. He could have made enough money from that.
No, there's never enough money though. That's the thing, is he was so high on himself and so consumed by his own kind of cult of personality that.
But it's just stupid. Like, obviously it's stupid from a point of view of the risk he was taking to get that little bit more money was outrageous.
Yes.
Even if we're talking about, let's pretend we are going to be his defense or on his side, which I can hazard a guess, Jeff, you're not, and neither am I. But let's pretend we are. You'd be like, don't be such a fucking idiot.
But
take the idiots that will pay all day, every day to get skinny or to get new hair or, to get fuller hair or to not age like they do or,
but
to like make your ears shrink, whatever it is. But why?
We see this over and over again. There's 1,000 examples of this, of people who start with like small grifts, small cons, small scams, and then it escalates and escalates and escalates, and they just find they have this weird mixture of being like, he was seemingly paranoid but also believed he could get away with anything. The one recent example of this is Alex Jones. So Alex Jones had an empire, a media empire, making boatloads of money. He's selling supplements, and I think a lot of the similar kind of things of playing into conspiracy theories, selling vitamins, claiming he's the cure to all these things. And then he just digs in on this Sandy Hook was an inside job and faked lie. This elementary school shooting, like the worst elementary school shooting in the history of America, and he decides that this is his thing. He had plenty of money, and this is the thing that bankrupted him. This is the thing that took his empire down. And for what? Why? Why this? Why? That seems so, of all the things. That was a thing that I was so confused by, because I don't think he believed it.
Is it like an untouchable mentality? Like, I could do whatever and I'll never be brought down?
I think that's part of it, of just feeling like there is no third rail for me. I can go anywhere I want. And with Robert Young, I think it's different for him, because I think for him, like with the cancer patients, he just saw vulnerable rich people, and he just saw them as a way to inflate his wealth. He saw them as a means to an end for him. And I think he was so divorced from the idea of, these are real people with real pain and real families, and I'm causing real harm. The idea that he would get them, he would ship them off of his property so they wouldn't die there, and drop them off at different hospitals.
But so okay, so this is what I'm getting at. And again, I just want to make it clear. I am in no way in support of anything he did. What I'm saying is, and I also am not a con person. I'd be terrible at it because I'm really bad at lying. But what I will say is, if he was going to do this, why not say, as he had said, like context. The reason he ended up being so very clearly guilty in the civil trial that Dawn took against him at the end, which I loved. They got to bring in Legally Blonde there. I was not expecting that.
Great moment.
Was when her lawyer, Bibi, noticed that he was bald on the back of his book. And he had said one of the things he cured was hair loss. And she said, did this diet help you like grow your hair back? And he said, yes, but I also had to get surgery. And they kept harping on in the podcast about how this was the pivotal moment for people, the jury and him, like, because he got really annoyed and he got embarrassed, blah, blah. In my head, I was saying, you fucking idiot, about Robert Young. Not because this is when he fell. That's not why I'm saying that. But because I'm like, you could have done this. Again, I do not agree with him doing this. But he could have done this and said, alongside your treatment, if you do this, it's going to make the world of difference. Alongside your conventional medicine, you can drink these things. Give me money with the drinking. Come to my ranch or whatever you're calling it. And also get your chemo. And also this will make better. I'm not saying that anyone should ever do that. Just disclaimer. What I'm saying is, what a fucking idiot. He put so much risk on himself. Like, he made this fall apart.
He did.
Just by being an idiot. That blew my mind, because I was like, if you're going to be such an arsehole and want to make money off such vulnerable people, at least save your own ass.
I mean,
and
hubris,
he didn't.
It's hubris. He gets away with it in small ways and then slightly bigger ways and then bigger and bigger ways. Are you looking up hubris?
How much are you going to judge me if I say yes?
It's not a word I use regularly. Is it
just kept for here when you know I won't understand it and I'll have to Google it and you'll see me Googling it and then you'll make me look like an idiot?
I was actually kind of proud of myself for thinking of the word in this moment.
Is that because you were full of hubris? Is that an example of hubris? It was, wasn't it? That was really good. I turned it back on you. But do you reckon, I'd hazard a guess now, Jeff, that every person on this planet has fallen for some fucking BS at one point in their lives? I have.
What have you fallen for? Anything notable?
I mean, nothing not a wild story, but me and my friend went on a 5-week road trip around America. And the very first day, I think it was the first day we arrived in San Francisco. This is a long time ago now. We were walking through one of these malls and someone came up and was like, oh my God, I can make your skin so smooth and blah, blah, blah. And we ended up spending about $300 on some fucking skin shite. And the two of us were like, oh, we've been duped. I think we just went for a pint after that and we're like, fuck it. But I've fallen for loads of stuff, like diets we spoke about the last time. Between diets, between the magic fix, it's...
You want to believe, and you want to believe...
You want to believe you can be lazy about stuff. Well, sorry, in my case. Not in the case of people who are fighting an actual illness.
Yeah, I think that's what's so tragic about Dawn's story. Dawn's story is so sad. She wanted a father figure. She didn't have one as a child. She had a what I would describe as a challenging childhood. And she was very open about this. She was searching for something with Robert Young that just wasn't there. And he took such advantage of her. The fact that he would refer to her kid as his own, that was uncomfortable. And then when she finally got the chemotherapy and the cancer was in remission and she sends him her medical records.
Yeah.
And he reposts those pictures on Facebook and takes credit for it. I was really surprised she even sent them to him because, before that, one of her turning points realizing that he was just a prick was when she
went to a class of his, a lecture of his.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he used her...
The microscopy. Yeah, the blood.
Yeah, to basically say that this is someone who wasn't following what he said.
I mean, this was an abusive relationship. And
100%. But, you know, he felt he had enough control over her at that point that, you know, he could do that without compromising the relationship.
he did for a long time.
Yeah, I know.
And he did over a lot of these people that we heard from, because there's other people that we haven't talked about. We don't have to talk about all of them, but I mean, there's June, the accountant, who ended up kind of running the day-to-day business.
Yeah.
And she put up with this for a long time.
It took her to be fired to leave, which I think brings you back to one of the other things I kind of feel like this podcast highlighted, which is kind of the, you know, the whole sheep mentality.
Yeah.
I felt like it was so apparent here from June, who it took her to be fired to leave. We had Ben Johnson. Was he just a prick? He's the doctor, the fake doctor.
Oh, the fake doctor.
Who was supposed to be on site the whole time and flew in when someone died.
Yeah, I think he was just in it for the paycheck, right? Like he saw this as a way to make easy money.
I mean, do you not take an oath?
What is an oath, really? Like what? What?
Promise? Even like Dawn, obviously, Shelley, Chef Mary, Dessa, the cleaner.
The cleaner,
Can
yeah.
we take a minute? I fucking loved Dessa's narrative, like her voice, her vocabulary. I loved it. At one stage, she calls him a shyster.
Yeah.
I just thought she's so funny. She has no qualms about just using her like very raw language. When you compare Robert Young's vocabulary, his vernacular, to Dessa's, I love that. Because I feel, you know what I love? I feel like people will believe him over her because he's using all these fancy words. When actually, a lot of the time, when people are using fancy words, they're trying to cover up for the fact that they haven't got a fucking clue what's happening.
What are you trying to say? I feel like that's a shot at me.
Hubris. That's all I say. Hubris. Some people have too much hubris.
I also just think the absurdity of some elements of this, and we don't get a ton about this. Like, we get glimpses of what this diet entails. Like, there's a couple of things that stood out to me. One was where the host, Larison, is listing some of the things that are alkaline or not alkaline. And she talks about how lemons are alkaline.
But oranges aren't.
Lemons are the most acidic thing out there, right? That's my experience with lemons, very acidic. Like the most acidic. And then also Dawn, when she was on the no chewing diet, and I think that's when she was pregnant, and she couldn't chew foods.
Well, I told you this about a friend of mine who chewed an envelope before.
It's one of those things that I'm sure you're in the moment, you're in this world. It seems to make sense. And again, he's using fancy words. He puts
But he's also putting the blame on you.
Yeah.
You fail.
The amount of...
You chew? You want to chew?
The victim blaming that goes on from this guy is sometimes hard to listen to.
Here, what did you make of... I found it very interesting when the prosecution were saying that before the arrest, they had the entire prosecution, like the entire case ready. And that struck me as interesting, odd.
Why?
Scary. Because I don't know how long, they didn't mention how long it took them to put the case together fully. But how many people were impacted between them starting to put the case together and them finishing it?
As easy as it is to see in the way it's presented in this podcast, I think the legal case still seems sort of thin.
Which is like the entire podcast is trying to, I feel like, highlight. Having free will to decide on these things versus regulation of medical practitioners. The balance of that is really hard.
Yeah.
In California, there's a lot of free choice for things, which is right.
Sure.
He took it a step too far because he wasn't saying do this and do others. He was saying do nothing else and do this. And he knew that what he was doing was wrong. There is no doubt that he did. There seemed to be no way legally to really come down on him.
They needed to prove that he was practicing medicine without a license. And he was doing so many things that weren't exactly practicing medicine. Like the thing that was most flagrant was the IVs. And they had a hard time catching him actually doing that.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
We recently discussed Noble, and we recently discussed a very harsh sentence on someone who was disrespectful to corpses.
Yes.
Many corpses, and we had a lot of discussion over it. To me, and I totally agree with what you're saying, that the way the case is put forward here, it's you know, cut and dry for someone who has no legal perspective and doesn't understand how you actually get a case won or prosecuted. But to me, the comparison of these two cases is very similar. Part of me thinks Robert Young is like, well, sure, fuck it, these people are going to die anyway. I might as well make money off them. We had Brent
Marsh, yeah.
Brent Marsh, who seemed to actually care a lot about people, but just was overwhelmed. Like, not a bad intent, but was overwhelmed. And that was the fight for him, was like, there was no intent. And then we have Robert Young, who has all the intent. All he has is intent. And the thing they can't pin on him is the actual deed, because he's just planting a seed in people's brains. Now, to me, of the two, Brent Marsh, who do I want to be in charge of my life? If I had to choose one of those men to be in charge of my life forevermore and my health, I am choosing Brent Marsh every day of the week. Every day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
So why is it that this guy is out there still making money?
Because he's a con artist.
But why is it that people like him can get away with it?
It's incredibly frustrating. He knows he knows enough of how to tread that line. He knows how to cover his tracks, he also cultivates this cult that people don't turn on him. People are so reluctant and he has enough people who are willing to defend him and say, no, that wasn't how it was, that he wasn't doing those things. He's insulated himself. Brent Marsh didn't insulate himself. Brent Marsh was by himself.
Because he had no intent.
Right. He wasn't trying to get away with anything. If anything...
So it's just like, oh, well, he didn't try hard enough to hide it. So this guy, he tried really hard-ish to put the blame on other people. So
well, and they even say this in, I think it was maybe the last episode, one of the last couple episodes, about how so much of the things that he does, that Robert Young does, are like the best people like him, the most successful people like him. They're not the best. They're all bad. Are sometimes it's 75% truth. Sometimes it's 50% truth. But there's a lot of truth in what he's saying.
So I found this really interesting as well, because they brought up the Wim Hof method. Do you know about that?
No.
Iceman. So Iceman is like his whole thing, which is like, his whole outlook is, if you absorb yourself in really cold water, even in a cold shower, cold sea swim, or an ice bath. How many people have you seen since you joined Instagram jumping into ice baths?
More than zero.
Yes. Wim Hof is the guy who did it. Like, he's the one who has like started this whole thing, because he claims all of these health benefits. You'll feel invigorated, your cells open, your brain opens, blah, blah, blah. Now, I have some stories to tell you about people who've gotten into bad health because of jumping into ice water too quickly. It's not good for you. I did think it was interesting to compare. At one stage, they did bring up Wim Hof in this, and I've heard him interviewed and know how many people have taken his advice on board. It is comparable, but to me, from what I've heard of him, he's not saying do nothing else but jump in ice water. He does say he thinks for mental health benefits, for stress levels, for lots of things, it's very helpful. But from my knowledge, he is not saying turn your back on everything else because this is the miracle cure. This jumping in ice every day is going to make your entire life better.
It's a pretty big difference.
It's a really big difference. And I think it goes back to me feeling like it's really easy to fall for these things when they're small things. It's really easy to say, well, if I just do this extra annoying thing every day, like, I don't want a cold shower.
So, Dee, in the end, Dr. Miracle, was this worth your time?
Can I retitle it?
What would you retitle it?
Is Dawn's Journey not? That's what's coming to my head right now.
You want to make it more centered on Dawn.
without Dawn's story going throughout, she was at episode 1 and she went to episode 5, started episode 6, I think.
6, yeah.
Without her, I feel that I wouldn't have had that. It wouldn't have connected with me as much.
I agree with that. I guess I said this before, but I'll say it again. I think Dawn was the through line that made this relatable, understandable, that brought empathy to this story. If it was all just about Robert Young, if he was really at the center of it, it would have been difficult to get through. But I honestly think it was fairly victim centered and gave these, like we talked in the preview about the host maybe being a little bit flippant or a little bit jokey, but I thought she handled the victims with respect and dignity.
Yeah, actually that's one point we hadn't mentioned is the host. I thought she did a great job. I think when I started to like her most is at the end when she was questioning Robert Young.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Well, and actually I want to say something about that because we talked in Noble, so talking about our last week's show. In that, one of my criticisms was that I felt like the host was really hounding Brent Marsh and went too far. And that's debatable. I think that's a debatable point. Here, I was so glad she pursued him and got that interview with him because I wanted her to question him, and I was happy with how she did it. I thought she did a good job. I also appreciated that she called attention to going to his little vaccine conspiracy theory lecture, describing how it was in this sort of off the beaten path room and one person clapping.
oh my God, the one person clapping was hilarious.
That
Yes, you are correct. That was one person clapping. Was it himself? Do you think he was clapping himself?
Might have been his son. I thought she did a great job. I thought she handled this story very well. I thought he didn't get the comeuppance that I wanted, but he got a little bit of a comeuppance in that his life seems sad and smaller now. Although, one other note, I did go on Goodreads and read through a bunch of people reviewing his book. Well, he has a bunch of books, but The pH Miracle, which was the biggest book. And I was pretty disappointed to read how many people gave it good reviews in the last several years. That made me a little sad. There are also people on the other side who are basically saying this is all bullshit and giving it 1-star reviews. But there's still people who want to believe that this is the right thing to do. And that makes me a little sad. And to be clear, there's a lot of good things. Like there's a lot of true things to what he's saying. I mean, the basis of it, it's eat more vegetables, eat less processed foods, get more exercise. That's all true.
Sorry, what I couldn't believe when Larison asked him at that talk, he was like, "Oh, all it takes to
the baking soda and water
level out your take the acid out of your blood is the baking soda and water like 2 times a day or whatever." And she was like, "That's it? Like, what about all these avocados?" I mean, that's way cheaper than having an avocado. Like, avocados are expensive.
A box of baking soda is like $3 and will last you a while.
On that note, would I recommend to a friend? Yes, I think the podcast itself was formatted really well. It's a very different push of a podcast that we like, very different type of crime. I would say be ready to be angry and frustrated. But what true crime podcast do you not end up like being angry at someone?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have any type of emotional reaction, then what are you even doing? Before we go, just a reminder, patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time. You will get all kinds of fun stuff, some bonus content, early access to future shows, outtakes. You'll also get that great feeling inside of supporting us and making this show. All right, Dee, next time, I have a very important question for you. Maybe the most important question I've ever asked you.
Oh, God.
Have you ever been to Wyoming?
Is that a state?
It is a state, and we are specifically going to Laramie, Wyoming, which is the site of the coldest case of cold cases. So specifically, the podcast is called The Coldest Case in Laramie. It is about a murder that happened in the 1980s, and even though there was seemingly no question about who did it, the case was never solved. So it's The Coldest Case in Laramie. It is a podcast put out by Serial Productions. You've heard of Serial. And the New York Times. That's on the next So Much Crime.
So little time. So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of MimeGov Media. The executive producer is Paxton Calariso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show in your podcast app. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.